For this video, I'm going to talk about how you should analyze your data after the separations of mixtures lab. So on your lab organizer, you should have some of your data written down. You should have things like how much of the mixture did you have before the lab. So let's say everybody's going to get about 10 grams. And you should have separated, substance A from substance B from substance C, and they're probably in some things. You might find that your substance B is actually still sitting in your filter paper. So before you start, hopefully you have gotten the mass of that filter paper, so you can subtract that from your total mass, and you might find that your substance A is sitting in a beaker. So let's say you started with a beaker that had a mass of 200 grams. So when you look at your final amounts here, the amounts that you have after you've separated them, we're not going to have any before amounts on this, but we'll have some after amounts. So let's say your filter paper ended up being about 5.6 grams with the substance in it, and your beaker ended up being about 202.9 grams. So what you need to do is subtract out the filter paper. So substance B is sitting in the filter paper, so that means you recovered about 5.1 grams of substance B. And substance A is sitting in the beaker, so subtract 200, that means you have about 2.9 grams of substance A, and you probably have substance C sitting in a baggie, and let's just say that we got 1.8 grams of that substance back. So here are your experimental values. This is what you got during your experiment, and let's say the expected, or what you were supposed to get, was something like 3 grams, 5 grams, and 2 grams. So we can see that there's some difference in there, but we don't know how much difference there is. So we need to do a calculation called a percent error, and this will give us an idea, a measure of how much different these substances, or how much different these masses are from what was expected. So this is going to be your expected minus what you actually got in your experimental. And we want to take the absolute value of that, so we want to ignore any negatives. And we're going to divide that by the expected. That'll give us a decimal, hopefully. So we'll multiply that by 100 to actually get our percentage. So our percent error for our substance A, we expected to get 3 grams. We actually got 2.9 grams over the expected. We'll multiply that by 100. So when we put that into our calculator, we'll put in 3 minus 2.9, okay, and then we can just continue to divide that by 3, which should give us a percentage, multiply it by 100, and it looks like we got about 3.3 repeating, but remember, we're going to ignore that repeating in science. We're going to cut that off at, let's just say, 3.3% error, which is not too bad. So 3.3% error for substance A. For substance B, we should have gotten 5 grams. We actually recovered 5.1 grams divided by what we should have gotten times 100. So let's put that into our calculator. 5 minus the 5.1. And here's where we're going to ignore that negative. We're not concerned with that. It's absolute value. So 0.1, again, divided by 5 this time. That was our expected. We get 0.02 times 100, which will give us a percent error of about 2%. So again, still not too bad for doing chemistry in a middle school classroom. And so the last one will be our substance C. Again, we expected to get about 2 grams. We actually got about 1.8 grams, absolute value. And our expected is 2 grams. So put that in the calculator. 2 minus the 1.8, right, divided by the 2 and times 100. So we got about 10% error. So there's a little bit more error with our substance C. But again, these numbers really are not too bad for what we're doing here in class. So now, part of your conclusion, you need to decide why were our numbers off. This number was a little low, or this number was a little high, and this number was a little low. So what could have happened during your procedure that would have caused the percent error, these differences in how much you recovered based on how much you were expected to recover.